What's up, everyone? It's 6:03 on a Wednesday. That means it's time for the Clone Zone. I'm Alex.
I'm Molly.
And we're going to talk about the latest episode of The Bad Batch titled The Harbinger. As usual, it won't just be us. We have two great guests, both from the Skytalkers Podcast. Please welcome Charlotte and Caitlin. Hey, how are you doing?
Hi. Great. How are you guys?
Good. Let's have small talk and pretend we didn't just do this before we went live.
How are you guys doing? How was your day?
It's great. Everything's great. This was a really fun episode. Before we dive into it, it's been a while since we've chatted, especially about the Bad Batch. So how are you both enjoying season 3 so far?
Oh, it's just the best. It just keeps getting better. I feel like the Bad Batch was all 3 seasons, it feels like has been like the surprise gift for Caitlin and I, especially because we weren't super big clone fans before. We didn't really get the like whole thing, the obsession before, but this show made us get it. And every season our heart breaks more. This season has just been amazing. It's just, I can't believe it's almost over too. It makes me very sad.
Yeah, I think we've been talking a lot the past couple weeks about just how attached we are to all of these characters and the idea of it being over. I don't know. I don't think we're emotionally ready, to be quite honest, which, like Charlotte said, is kind of a really big surprise to us and has been over the past couple of seasons with the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I feel similarly. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of the clones either going into this. Like, we watched Clone Wars kind of later in life. So I was like, I mean, I get it if you grew up with it, but we were already like full-grown adults when we watched it. And I was like, okay, this is fine. But something about the Bad Batch just really made me fall for everybody. And like the fans too have been so pleasant and positive online for the most part. And that's been really nice to see.
It's been really fun to see people who, Molly and I's age, we were in college when the Clone Wars started, and getting to kind of unite with all of the people that grew up with the Clone Wars has been really fun. But I'm glad that so many people have rallied behind the Bad Batch, because I feel like so many of us, myself included, when they announced the series, we were like, really, them? But we're getting into it, and it's been a lot of fun. This episode was especially fun, bringing back more of that Clone Wars connection. So, Molly, how did you enjoy today's episode, The Harbinger?
I had a good, solid feeling that this was the one. This was the one that Ventress was going to be in. We had a pretty decent setup for a new character to come in the last episode. So I had a feeling this was going to be her episode, and I was so happy when she showed up. Just kind of subtle too. Like, I feel like from the glimpses we got of her from the trailers and stuff, we thought she was going to come in just like guns a-blazing or lightsabers blazing and whatever. And so she just kind of like shows up. She's like, hey, here's your intel. I'm here to do my job. Not mess anything up.
I think that's a good point to bring up. Charlotte, Caitlin, were you surprised at all that Ventress was in this episode, or were you expecting it?
I think we were expecting it.
Yeah, I kind of thought we might wait one episode in between after the end of last week's episode, but it definitely makes sense that that's who Fennec was talking about. But yeah, like you said, Molly, I think the tone of this show, of the episode, really surprised me, honestly. It skewed definitely kind of cuter than I thought it would, which I thought was a great surprise for the episode that we bring Ventress back in.
Yeah, I think that I understand why. I've seen some people sort of frustrated a little bit about how like this episode ended with a lot of questions, when it felt like this episode might give us a lot more answers, especially with the M count of it all. And I, like Caitlin said, I watched it sort of later in the day, and Caitlin was like, just FYI, it's a little sweet. It's sweeter than you might expect. And yeah, it definitely was. And but I loved it. I thought it was, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of thematic reasons why bringing Ventress here on Pabu with the Bad Batch, her encountering Omega, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I was surprised. I'm on a tangent here, but I was surprised to see Ventress in like such a redemption vibe, I guess. it was great.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting that, we're used to seeing her as just go, 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 kill, kill, kill. But we read about her her beginning at a redemption in Dark Disciple, thought it was over. But this is the first time on screen we've seen her as like good guy Ventress. So
Mhm.
it is interesting to see her in that new form.
She doesn't do anything violent or attack anything without being provoked,
Provoked, yeah.
which I thought was really nice to see that side of her. She's like, and she has that line of like, I don't want to kill you guys, but you're making it really hard for me. Like, that is a perfect Ventress line. She's like,
Right?
I'm
Those are
good,
my
but
instincts. I don't want to do it, but I know how to.
Just
you
so you
guys
know
are
I
really
could.
testing me. Yeah, she totally whoops their butts and is
Oh
like,
yeah.
you want to try again? What's up?
Yeah.
I thought that
I gotta
hand-to-hand
say, even
combat was
seeing
so
her
cool.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
even seeing her training Omega, I thought was so it was like that moment of, oh, this is a different Ventress than the last time we saw her on screen. Just the idea that she's actually going through these motions with Omega in the first place was just it's like, oh, okay, all right. This is kind of a different iteration of you now on screen, on TV.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, seeing the softer side of her, like she doesn't really want to do anything for Omega, but just like a couple of pleases, and she's like, "Fine, okay."
All right, get on the boat.
Go
Well,
find
we can
power.
we can dive into one of the big questions left at the end of this episode. Is does Omega have a high M count? Or we can say midichlorian. They finally said it in the episode. We've all been waiting. Does she
Finally.
have a high midichlorian count, or what do you think Ventress was lying about?
My brain
I-
is so scrambled on this topic, I'll be
Me
honest.
too.
Yeah.
I feel
just-
like I don't know. You go, Caitlin.
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel like I think I thought that it was just that midichlorians could be transferred into her, so then she could
Mhm.
become force sensitive. But now maybe she has them, and that's a factor in the genetic testing that they're doing on her. Maybe she does have it, and it does need to be trained, and that's actually what Ventress is lying about. I honestly don't know, and it's something I go back and forth on. I feel like every single week, and honestly too, back and forth on what I hope is the answer of
Yeah.
does she or does she not have like heightened force capabilities, because I think, as Ventress says, and we see throughout all of Star Wars, everyone has M counts, midichlorians in them. It's just to what degree and can you actually be trained to use it? So she obviously has them, right? I guess it's just, will she ever be trained to use them? Does she have that capability? And you know what? I don't know. I don't know.
Her coming into this as the Harbinger sets up so many different things, and one of them is kind of that question will be lingering in everyone's minds of like, well, is she force sensitive? I saw a couple people on Twitter saying like, why didn't she just test her blood? And I was like, well, I don't know that Ventress knows how much she's already been tested on. I don't know that she knows Omega's been at Mount Tantus. Maybe she's just really old school when it comes to these things, and she's like, I have a good eye for this.
She
I
just
don't
didn't have a
bother-
Schick razor like Qui-Gon had to do.
Yeah,
the
she-
quiz, but
Maybe she just doesn't
Not
have
the
that tech
razor.
anymore.
Every Jedi Sith doesn't have one of those with them.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like with that whole thing, the testing of the blood sort of had always represented this like dogmatic, scientific, not like spiritual side of the
Mhm.
Force. And that was sort of a downfall of the Jedi in the prequels, just in general, right? And I think that this shift towards perhaps Ventress like not going that route proves that she's on a different path in this weird way, that maybe testing your force abilities outside of just like numbers is really what you're trying to get to when you talk about like the spiritual core of using the force. It also reminded me a lot of The Last Jedi with the whole 3 lessons and everything. Like there was 3 different
Mhm.
things that you had to do, I guess, to test the M count if you have the force. So I thought that was super interesting.
Mhm. And you can kind of see the same frustrations in Omega that you kind of see a
Yeah.
little bit in Rey, but she's pretty quick to settle into it.
Totally.
I really like, Molly, you brought up the Harbinger title, and I'm starting to lean towards Omega probably is force sensitive because of that final conversation of if she has potential in the force, then she's gonna have to be trained. She's gonna have to leave all of you because you're a distraction and you won't stop helicopter parenting. So I think that's probably one of the things that Asajj is a harbinger of, is the fact that they're going to have to separate from their little sister who they've helped raise over the past 3 years, which already hurts.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. And she's a harbinger for the idea that Pabu isn't safe.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Something is coming for Pabu, and I hate
Caitlin is very attached to Pabu.
Attached to Pabu.
It's so nice. It became my new answer to, and anytime someone asked, like, what's a place in Star Wars you would want a vacation? You know, it became my new answer for that. Like, I want to go to Pabu.
Why wouldn't you want to?
The sushi there, like, it looks great.
Right?
Yes.
It's perfect. Yeah, it definitely feels. I'm with you, Alex. I think after this week, I am thinking that she is force sensitive. Check back in with me again next week.
Yeah.
It'll be a different answer. But yeah, it does feel like the Harbinger is twofold of like this encounter with someone force sensitive like Ventress calling out that Omega could need to be trained and therefore separated from the Bad Batch. And then also, you know, what we were just saying, the fact that Pabu can be found, and that means it is not the safe haven that they think it is.
So there's a fun question. Molly and I were debating earlier today. How do you think she found Pabu? She just said she has her ways, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question.
Force?
The force was my first my first inkling. So if it goes back to the question of is Omega force sensitive or like strong enough in the force that she could be detected, and if that was the answer, then yes. I also think there's something to the vagueness of that that's totally fine. That like maybe it doesn't need to be answered, or maybe it was from Fee somehow through the network. I don't know. I'm not sure.
My thought was that she's just really cool and smart. So
exactly. That was my takeaway too.
Yeah, she's Ventress. Why wouldn't she know where everyone in the galaxy is if she needs to find them?
But then, Alex, you had an idea about how to bring Quinlan into this.
Yeah, because I'll bring up Kevin. Thanks so much for the super chat, because Kevin wants to know what are our chances that Quinlan could appear this season. I'm kind of thinking they're low now. If he didn't appear in this episode, I don't know that they're going to bring him in later. But my headcanon right now is that Asajj and Quinlan have paired back up, and maybe Finnick swiped something of Hunter or Wreckers and gave it to Quinlan so he could use his psychometry to find out where Pabu is. So it's still the Force. The answer is still the Force, but
the Force.
I'm hoping that they're still together.
I really like the idea that whole time Quinlan was on the ship with a little iPad, just like watching his stories.
Quinlan's an iPad kid.
Yeah.
She left.
She was like, "You stay."
Down. You would be.
Yeah.
Ventress is like, "You stay here. This doesn't concern you until I need you. Just chill out."
I think there's also something with Quinlan and the Way, right? The like safe haven that we see his name on in Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So if Pabu is also a type of safe haven, I wonder if there's a connection there of maybe something that Ventress is involved in, you know, that we just don't know about yet that could be related to that.
We had a long
that's
talk
a good point.
A couple of days ago about whether or not she was involved with the path and how that would look.
It would be so cool. Tales of the Jedi.
That's also been, Well, I mean, I'll bring up.
Maybe.
This is very relevant. So thank you, Gio, for the super chat. But Gio's really hoping that this episode could be like a backdoor pilot for a Ventress show, maybe an early Path show. And I agree that I think that there's a chance for that. It feels like a very Filoni thing to do, to be like, we're going to introduce the Bad Batch here right at the end of the Clone Wars, and then they get their own show. And here comes Asajj, and they've already said that questions about her are going to be answered in future content. And I could see this happening.
I agree. I feel like wasn't it Dave that suggested Ventress coming into this anyway? So
Yep.
it would make sense if he is like the architect of all the future shows that are coming out, whether or not he's not directing them, but like coming up with the ideas as like the creative lead, right? Maybe it would make sense for that. I would also love that. A show would be awesome. I still think there's potential for Ventress to be part of Tales of the Jedi, the season 2 that's coming out sometime in the future. And maybe that would show more about what we're talking about here in a different sense. I think that would be really cool. There's so many possibilities with that show that it's almost like you can name any Jedi that or Force sensitive person that you've encountered and be like, oh, maybe they are going to be in that show. But yeah. I so cool.
I like that you brought Dave into this because it does for me too. I feel like Dave has all these plans in his head, but I kind of went to the Tales of the Jedi side more so than her getting her own show or there being a show about the path. That would be neat. I just thought like, oh, Ventress's story arc would fit perfectly for Tales of the Jedi. You could show her time as a Jedi. You could show like a middle, and then you could show how she came back from the dead, what that looks like. So I really hope that there's an episode of hers in Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter today talk about if Tales of the Jedi was Ventress and Quinlan Voss's story, and they each, had the separate half, and then the finale or the middle of the series was them coming back together when they find each other, which I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that.
I love that idea.
Yeah. They're both survivors, and I think that would be really cool to have like 3 episodes and then one that is a culmination. I agree that her in Tales of the Jedi would be great because we barely have anything about her time as a Jedi. But I do wonder, like, you could have done that without resurrecting her.
Yeah.
So part of me is like, if you're going to bring her back, it does seem like you want her around for the future of the timeline as well. So it's the same thing as Omega being Force sensitive. I keep going back and forth on what I want.
I like this comment from Star Wars Sessions, the Path Show. Ventress could meet Marin.
I like that. 2 Night Sister survivors.
It'd be so
That's
cool.
what I'm saying. Like we keep seeing more and more Night Sister stuff. Like I want to see more.
Yeah. They're pumping out the Night Sisters content, like really shoving it in our face about the witches.
Pay attention to these witches.
Yeah. Understand their lore.
And we're getting a whole new group of witches in the Acolyte, apparently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll be connected. I don't know.
I love that.
Yeah.
To the original question, though, about the percentage of Quinlan coming back, in this show, I think no. I think we're focusing on clones for the rest of the season. And I don't think we're going to see Ventress again either, which is interesting because I feel like they teased her a lot in the original trailer. I'm not that disappointed about it because I think that we're heading towards an epic finale that hopefully is satisfying and maybe a happy ending. I don't know. Is it too much to ask?
Someone needs a happy ending here.
You told me it was too much to ask.
Me? I said that it was going to be a happy ending, but there's definitely going to be a sacrifice. Period. So I don't know.
Okay.
And that's just my thought, is that I feel like the sacrifice doesn't have to be like a person, but it could be like someone moving on. And I think, Alex, you brought up in your review of this particular episode about how it's such a core theme of the show about like fatherhood and children growing up and moving on. And it's something we've talked about a lot on our podcast, about what happens if Omega goes off on her own. This episode really did kind of set that up of we're seeing Ventress be someone who's off on her own. And since we know the character, we know what she's been through, and she seems pretty secure right now. And also seeing that and almost thinking about that as like a mirror for Omega and wondering because clearly Omega looks up to her and is interested in her and thinks that she's interesting and cool. And it just makes you think, what is Omega's future with or without the Bad Batch as her dads, basically. Like what happens when she goes off on her own. And they've really established in this season that Omega's older than them. So her going off on her own, I feel like with someone to be trained or something. Again, this goes back to our original question of is she force sensitive? But it really brings, I don't know. There's a lot of paths in front of her, I think, and a lot of ways that this show could end.
Whether or not she's force sensitive, I think the season has started. Like, I was surprised with how quickly she escaped Tantus, how quickly she got back to Hunter and Wrecker. And they were like, we thought we were going to have to save you, but you can do this on your own. So I think we've reached this point where she has learned everything that she can from Tech and Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshair. And she's going to need to keep growing. So that's not the arc I was expecting for this season, but it does feel like that's what they're setting up. And they hit that again this episode with Asajj being like, I'm not talking about training as a soldier. Being trained as a force sensitive is totally different. So whether or not she goes off to be a Jedi or train in the Force, I do think they're going to part ways. And I'm sad about it.
Well, and
we're all going to cry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready. This episode, she literally referred to like Wrecker and Hunter as distractions. She was like, no distractions today. Like, I'm here, just me. And like my heart skipped a beat when she said that for a second. I was like, oh, that's like the first time I guess we have seen her refer to them as distractions. And she does get really excited around like other strong female presences, and she definitely did with Ventress. I'll go ahead and bring up my drawing because it's literally Omega falling in love with Ventress and her just telling her to stop smiling.
Stop it.
It's so good.
Such a cute scene.
I loved that little moment between them because Omega was like, or Ventress has that line where she's like, I'm sure they told me, or they told you all about me and what I've done. And she's like, yeah, they did. Like, yeah, I don't care. That makes you cool. But that moment with them on the boat was so cute. And she just had like this huge grin. And Ventress is like, I don't know how to handle this.
You reminded me of something that I really liked about this episode where, they were telling her that she's a war criminal. And she's like, well, people can change. And Crosshair being like, you're being naive. I love that. And she immediately claps back at him. But it felt so in character for him to act like, nah, Asajj can't change, because I don't think he is fully believing he can change. But I just loved that fast line from him and her shutting him down immediately.
Yeah, it really reminded me of what Michelle Ong talked about in the roundtables that we did, because she had mentioned, she'd said that Omega finds Ventress, can't remember the exact word, but it was like intriguing or interesting. Like she's very curious about Ventress, which I thought was such a great way to describe it. And now to actually see it in person, it's like, it represents this whole path that Omega could follow, that she's not sure if that's where she's supposed to go with the idea of force sensitivity and uncovering what M count is. Like Ventress is someone that has answers that her dads don't have at all. So that is really intriguing and interesting for her.
Yeah, it reminds me of the title. We've already talked about this a little bit, but the title being the Harbinger. I always think of the Harbinger of Doom, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean the Harbinger of Doom, right? It could just mean we're ushering in a different era or a different I don't know, it's a forerunner, it's foreboding, but it doesn't necessarily
ominous.
Mean but it doesn't have to be ominous. It is ominous because I know that we're entering into the like end of the series, right? But for Omega, I feel like it could just usher in a change and a realization for her.
That's really optimistic.
I know.
It could mean both.
Well, I think a good change.
The tone of the episode was so like cool and like cute, and I don't know, a little bit more relaxed than I think we were all expecting. So I think when I look at the title, The Harbinger, it makes me think twice about what they were trying to share in the meat of this episode.
They do a really good job with their titles, and so often they mean more than one thing, 2 or maybe 3 times, 3 different meanings. But I love what they're doing with Omega, no matter whether she's force sensitive or not, just trying to learn and grow beyond what she's learned already. And the batch hasn't done anything wrong, but they just can't understand this other path that she might take. And there's no way they could have taught her about it because they never were trained in it. And it reminded me of probably what my parents went through, because I went down a different career path than they expected. But every parent probably has to go through this, where you have this vision for your child, but they also have to be able to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think
want them
thinking about
Or
like
like
the
family vacations together. Just can we
Well,
get like a mini web series of them just going on a series of family vacations together?
Please.
I don't think she would leave the batch forever.
No.
Nah,
she just has to go to like college, you
Yeah.
know. But I
that's
think thinking
true.
about the end of the series, what we've all kind of been talking about, but this chapter of Omega's life, her goal has been to keep the Bad Batch together. You know, I think that's been her main objective through kind of all of this. It's always about having everyone together. She didn't want Echo to leave. Of course, you know, getting Crosshair back. Even thinking about when Wrecker had that the chip malfunction and all of that, you know, the goal was always to have the Bad Batch together. And so I think, you know, as we've been talking, it makes sense that this next chapter of her life would be a new chapter away from that original goal of keeping the Bad Batch together. And this season really has been exploring that, with her wanting to get the clones saved off of Tantus. Like, that's really been her goal this season, has been, how do we get back to Tantus? I've got to save those other clones. And now, you know, figuring out these unanswered questions from Ventress too, about her specifically outside of the Bad Batch. So I think we're all right that there will be some separation at the end of this series, but a needed one.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Well, since you brought up your drawing, Molly, I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way. I did one of my favorite funny moments from the episode when
Oh my god. His nose is so big.
that's what
Oh
I
my
drew
gosh.
first, and then I was like, that's too big, and
No, it looks
I ran out of
perfect.
space. But
Wait,
I
bring
love
it back up. Bring it back up. I need a closer look. It's so good.
I loved him looking through the macro binoculars and seeing Ventress look right back, and that noise he made cracked me up.
It was very funny. It's like, how does she know?
Which, again, kind of like Crosshair, it's like part of the training
Yeah.
is knowing when there's eyes on you.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'll share mine next, because Charlotte's is good and mine is, I'm like so embarrassed to show mine. It's so bad. But I really
No.
liked Ventress in the water. I liked her hair. So I
Yes.
tried to draw her with like a mohawk. And it says at the bottom, it's backwards, but Ventress is coming, Omega. I tried to draw her in profile like she actually was, but it was somehow so much worse.
Oh, it's
but I
very
just loved
hard.
seeing her hair like all different directions.
I was
When
surprised they animated that.
Me
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
They really went for it with the way that it waves in the water. They didn't have to
And-
do that, but they did it for us.
And under the water too. Like
Yeah.
her hair
Yeah.
was just like full on mohawk going
Yeah.
everywhere. When she came up out of the water and like it was slicked back, I was like, am I cutting my hair
Hello.
again?
You look
Yeah.
so good with your hair like that.
Oh, thanks.
Molly, it looked awesome.
Ventress
I
is
love-
gonna make me cut it again.
I love that every time some character gets a new like wet hair model, people freak out. It
It's
happened
important.
with Kazuda, Omega, Asajj. Hot Callus wasn't wet hair, but still,
It was
it's kind of
kinda the
along the
same.
same vein.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Same idea.
I'll show mine. Okay, so mine was from my favorite moment in the show, which was
Oops.
the
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
I don't know. And
I love that.
Yeah, I loved the sea creature moment. I felt like it was so symbolic of how far Ventress has come. And it really reminded me of when Rey heals the snake in Rise of Skywalker, which is actually my favorite moment in that movie. I just felt like this was such a good moment. It was such a quiet moment in an episode that I was just really surprised that we got so much I don't know, lovely character development. Charlie, thanks. No, it's not okay. I just have to defend myself. It's not great. I just have like really nice markers, okay, that allow for some nice shading. So anyway,
that was a really nice moment. Alex, you talked about, I didn't even put that together, of like her stuff in Dark Disciple with the snake and that sea creature. What was it?
Sleeper,
the sleeper. Yeah, it reminded me of that too.
Yeah, so in Dark Disciples, she has this whole thing where she's training Quinlan to go to the dark side and use the dark side, and part of it is they're on Dathomir, and she uses the Force to bond with a snake, and then she kills it. And she teaches Quinlan to use the Force to dominate the sleeper and kill it. And I feel like they were... maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the fact that the animal's pupils had like a black snake look in his eyes just made me wonder if they were trying to connect those two moments and show how different she is now, that this thing is straight up attacking her, but she's not going to dominate it in the Force. She's not going to just kill it. She will use the Force now to like calm it down and peacefully leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot.
I don't think you're looking too deeply at all into that. I think that that's exactly what was happening. Yeah.
So I guess they're just trying to show, for people who haven't read Dark Disciple, just, okay, you know what she was like in the Clone Wars, and then this is how she is now. But if you have read Dark Disciple, there's like a little extra flavor for it. Yeah. What have we not touched on yet?
I will say one of my favorite little like funny moments is when Ventress at the beginning is like, "Oh, tell me what you need the intel for," and everyone's like, "We're not telling you that." And Omega, of course, pipes up and like, "Well, it's for a friend. It's for like the classic excuse in any kind of situation like that. Like, yeah, it's for a friend of a friend of a friend, who thinks she could have a high M count." I thought that was such a cute little excuse from her. And of course, she gives up the game immediately after Ventress hands over the intel. It was very Omega.
Just immediately like, I'm going to be a Jedi.
Yeah,
that was a
tell me more.
Great moment. Yeah, that was so like, I liked that because it reminds you how young she really is.
Yeah,
because a kid her age is going to try that. They're going to try saying, "Oh, it's not for me, it's for my friend," and then immediately mess it up by being like, "What? Yeah. I'm a Jedi?"
We briefly touched on, hey Sean, the combat sequence, the fight.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll use that to go into a question that we got online earlier about why wasn't Tech's databank updated to show that, she had kind of come around. She worked with the Jedi a little bit. She even got a part in Dark Disciple. What are your thoughts on that?
I would assume they never recorded it anywhere that any of that happened. It's been a minute since I read Dark Disciple, but I would assume they all just kept it, off the record.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've read that.
Yeah.
I really appreciated your summary there about it. Yeah, I'm sure they just kept it off the record. And that might have actually been in the book too. I can't remember.
I don't recall them discussing keeping it off the record. It does make sense for everything that happened. But when we were discussing it, Molly had a far simpler explanation.
Well, I didn't even remember that they had actually officially pardoned her, so that didn't even cross my mind. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, they were just looking for an excuse to find any dirt on Ventress and be like, "Get out of here, you spy!" You just want Omega to take her to the Empire. And so I was like, they probably found file number 1 out of 100, saw what it said, and was like, "Yep, she's bad."
That's
like,
it. That's
didn't
where we
bother.
start and stop.
Didn't bother to look into it any more than that.
But I think the show actually supports that idea because I was looking for, little hints about why she was still alive or something. So I translated the Arabesh on the data pad, and it literally is a table of contents. It says her name, it has her picture, and it
They're at
says
chapter 1.
it says last known location, but it doesn't list it. List of offenses, but they're not there. Record ID and additional notes. So I assumed that's something you would click on and go look at more information. But instead, Crosshair was like, "It is Asajj Ventress. We got her."
Yeah,
And it
we got
stopped
her.
there.
They
He
found
did
like
his
one
own-
sign.
He did his own research. Yeah, didn't quite look into it enough. That's okay.
Didn't finish the Wikipedia page on her from tech.
No. Which is fine. Like they were just looking for an excuse, I think, to be like, nope,
definitely.
she's not safe.
I'll pull up this super chat real quick because Eloasti wants to shout out Skytalkers Podcast and just say how great it is.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, we love the name too. So appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
And because we're talking about the fight, thank you, Don Line Dude. Was I the only one who wondered if the hand-to-hand fight was done by mocap, like the season 7 fight with Maul and Ahsoka?
It looked that good. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that.
It did look really good.
It did look really unique, almost to the point where I feel like I've never seen something like that in the Bad Batch so far. And I felt really invested in what was the outcome of that fight, which isn't something usual for me. Sometimes when it gets a little too bang, bang, shoot 'em up, I kind of just don't really care, which is so silly for me to say. And people are probably going to crucify me in the chat for saying that. But I feel like I don't know. I feel like this really kept me on my toes and it got me on my edge of my seat for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel the same way. Like that's why I sometimes in certain episodes of the Clone Wars or certain arcs even where it's like mostly action, I just kind of like my eyes glaze over and I'm like, okay, let's get back to the story. But this held our attention, I think, because we were like, wait, can she take on all 3 of them? Like, how is she going to take down Wrecker? And the way she took down Wrecker was like,
she got him.
Such an awesome like wrestler move. I was like, oh my God, she's using like bits and pieces from like jujitsu and like classic wrestling and just like all kinds of stuff. And one of the animators even said that the dust coming off of them when she was like hitting them was like from the classic Bruce Lee movies. That was something they did.
Wow.
And I was like, I noticed that, but I didn't even think where that had come from. I was just like, oh yeah, it's to show more of an impact. But yeah, I think they took little bits and pieces from a bunch of different martial arts and used it for that fight.
It was so unique. I loved it.
Yeah, it felt so clean and like kind of what we're talking about when I'm the same way when there are huge action sequences. I'm just kind of lost in the sauce about what everyone is actually doing. But I felt like I think what made this stand out to me is that I felt like I could follow along and actually, I don't know, clearly see all of the hits and punches and kicks. And I don't know, it did really stand out. And you could tell how technical and how well done it was.
It's funny. I remember when the trailer came out and they showed what looked like a face-off between Asajj Ventress and the Bad Batch, and I was like, okay, this is just editing trickery. Clearly, they're not going to be fighting one another. But here we are, proven completely wrong. But it was totally agreed. Such a cool fight. I wouldn't be surprised if it were mocap at all.
Or at some point something traced, right? Of the animators somehow needing that sort of inspiration, and they traced it and they figured out how to get those body movements or something. It feels very so it was so fluid. It felt like there was definitely an external influence there.
Very fluid, very complex in the animation. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, let's mocap this and maybe refine it a little bit.
Yeah. I do love that the Bad Batch had their moment. They were like, we don't follow orders. And
So
she was
good.
like, oh, pat your on your head. Look at you.
It was so great though to see Crosshair pop up and then toss them all their blasters. I was like, yes, let's go.
Mhm.
I liked the way that scene ended with Omega running back in. Like, I got the flat like Troy in Community. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Everything's on fire.
On fire.
I love that she found that common ground with them. Like, I might have been a separatist, but we were both pawns of the same person. I'm not your enemy.
Mhm.
That was such a fun line. And so much of this season and series has been about like, well, we have to put aside our past conflict, and Senator Singh now has to meet with Senator Chuchi so they can take down the guy that's been controlling it all.
Yeah.
Dealing with the aftermath of the fact that two different sides of the Clone Wars it was a contrived war. I want to ask you guys, what do you think is going on with I know we've already talked about the M count and everything, but I don't think we really cracked it open. What do you think is happening with what were they doing to Omega's blood? What is the end game here? Because I think Caitlin and I cannot decide.
So my theory back for the first 3 episodes was that she wasn't force sensitive. I didn't think she had a high M count necessarily. I thought that something about her blood would be able to just maintain someone else's M count. That if they mixed Palpatine's blood with her blood, then they could clone him and he wouldn't lose his metachlorian count. That's what I thought was going on, but now I think I was wrong. I think she does have a high M count.
I don't know if she has a high M count or not. I guess for me personally, I was like, maybe this is just the Star Wars version of like type O negative blood that has never really been seen before, but she has it. And so she's like she has this like universal blood where it just so happens to work in these weird cloning experiments where they're trying to transport the Force into bodies. I don't know. I was trying to just simplify it to something special about her blood that allowed the Force transfer. But as far as her own M count, I don't know. I think they're gonna leave it pretty vague for now.
And I still can't. I'm with Caitlin. I can't decide what I necessarily want. Like, there is a part of me that really likes what it says about clones, because that's a question we get all the time. Is like, can a clone be force sensitive? And I've always pointed back to the first episode of the Clone Wars. I brought it up in my video today, but Yoda sat down with a bunch of clones and was like, each one of you is unique in the Force. And I think they just were never trained to believe they could be force sensitive. Also, they aged twice as fast, so that's got to be hard. But I would like a story that says like, look, here's a clone, they're force sensitive, it can be done, the Force is for everyone, etc.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I feel like for me, I wonder is the main foe in this entire conversation about the M count, the science experiments and things like that, is the main foe Palpatine, and is the end goal cloning Palpatine, as we've already seen, which already happens, right? We already know this in the story. Or is it something else? Is it like a super soldier situation? I feel like it could go either way in my brain about what the Empire wants to do. Maybe it's the same thing, you guys seem to think that we're going to end the series and maybe not know. Like maybe we'll continue to be big.
I think we'll know by the end.
Okay.
My full end game guess is that Project Necromancer is about cloning Palpatine, because I really love the idea that the clones together go to attack Mount Tantus, not to stop Project Necromancer, but to just save all their brothers.
Right.
Because it's like the epitome of saving what you love. But by doing that, they're going to ruin Palpatine's plans, which then decades later means the clones save the galaxy.
Yeah.
Because Palpatine's a crappy clone.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
I think
Are they going to find out about Project Necromancer?
I think maybe we will.
Mm.
Like the camera will show it somehow, but maybe not them.
I
don't
wouldn't
know.
mind it if the clones didn't find out at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I think right now they're trying their hardest to make a clone for Palpatine, make Palpatine clones and make them force sensitive, but we know that they're still trying Project Necromancer well into the story of The Mandalorian. So maybe somewhere along that timeline, then they start to experiment more with the super soldier idea and the Dark Trooper project. And they just kind of like keep trying they keep trying to pivot to these other projects because the clone Palpatines just aren't really doing it. They're real creepy, and at some point they figure Snoke out and they're like, oh, he looks rough, but just put him out there, it's fine.
Too tall.
Go with it.
He's too tall, his hands are too big. just go. We need another player on the field. Just go.
I just really wonder if Star Wars is going to actually address that, or if it's going to remain as vague as it is now. I think I'm fine with it remaining vague, because I think Star Wars kind of thrives in that vagueness in a lot of ways. But
it's got to
It would be
eventually
nice to get some answers.
Yeah, some answers somewhere.
I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want answers, but I'll be okay
so
if it's vague.
I want some
like
answers.
It's just been threaded through so many things now in the past couple of years that we're getting all these little bits and pieces of the story that, if not in the Bad Batch, somewhere we need something like more concrete about it, or to see something with a failed Palpatine clone or something like to that degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a problem that you're just always going to run into when you're telling stories with these huge time gaps, and you know what happens down here and you know what happens back here. So
it's interesting that this is the show that's answering questions about, that infamous somehow in The Rise of Skywalker. I would have thought that maybe someday we'd get like another show like Resistance, a New Republic animated series that would answer more questions. But the fact that they're able to do it way back at the start of the reign of the Empire has been a lot of fun.
Isn't that just how Star Wars works out, though? You get answers to things in the most surprising places when they address certain parts of the story.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And we got a couple of questions the past couple of weeks about whether or not Vader was going to show up in Bad Batch. And at first I was like, why would he? We already got Palpatine. We got like the biggest bad in here. Like, he's got this direct connection to Omega sort of now. But what do you guys think about the idea of Vader coming into this?
My head says no. My heart says I'm sure if Vader shows up, I'll be excited.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense, though.
I feel like if we see him, it could be in the aftermath of whatever happens on Tantus, that he might be called in at that moment. I don't really think we'd see. I don't really know what reason we'd have to see him before then, unless Palpatine sends him to Tantus to check up on the work. But the fact that Palpatine went there himself to check on it earlier this season kind of feels like this is his project and he'll be the most hands-on with it, I think. So I kind of think if we see him, it won't be until the end.
Something I was just thinking about that, though, and maybe this was part of the questions that you've received. It always sort of surprised me that Palpatine didn't explore certain ways to make Vader stronger after he had his terrible accident that happened on Mustafar. And I wonder if they could address the fact that maybe they want to, I don't know, supercharge, I hate using that term, but you know what I mean? Vader, to kind of restore him to the former glory that I think Palpatine thought Anakin was going to be before his body was burned and he lost a ton of limbs and things like that. And I wonder if that sort of hindered him in the Force in some way, in his power, and maybe Palpatine would be exploring ways to elevate his apprentice that he invested years and years and years into grooming, basically. So I don't know. Maybe it would make sense for him to be in the show. I didn't think about that.
They're going to try to combine his DNA with Zillow Beast DNA.
Oh.
Make him unstoppable. It's like, there's so
I don't
many
love
different.
that.
There's so many different experiments going on at Tantus. Like, I do wonder if while they're saving the clones, we could just like see them running by a ton of like crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we talked about like them having a kind of a cabin in the woods moment with the big outbreak at Tantus, where you just see all the weird experiments escaping, and you're like, oh my god, what else are they doing here?
For
Just
whatever
like what we
reason,
saw
they
in
have
the beginning of the season.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I remember being like, that this feels like a potential foreshadowing for just the experiments running loose.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Definitely.
don't hook all of your locks up to one button.
No.
It's always a bad idea.
If there's one button to close every door, there's one button to open every door.
That is, I mean,
Funny.
the Zillow Beast being there feels like something that's gonna come back.
I feel
Yeah,
like the
it has
series
to.
has to end with the Zillow Beast somehow, right?
Well,
When
Hemlock
does
talks
the
about
new-
other exotic creatures, materials,
Mhm.
Yeah.
something when Palpatine was there.
Yeah, he mentioned something about their larger projects as well, which I
Yeah.
assume is the Zillow Beast.
Zillow
and
Beast,
Palpatine's like,
yeah.
bye. I don't care.
When's the new Godzilla movie come out? Because we got a giant
we got the
a
Dune.
worm
Yeah.
for Dune, and I'm like, maybe they're waiting.
Could be.
Dave Filoni does love to throw in any Godzilla reference he possibly can. So I know this isn't Dave's show. I don't like being that person that talks about the Bad Batch as like Dave's thing, but I know he's still sort of involved.
He still has a say in a lot of
Totally.
stuff. He could be like, put a tiny Godzilla in there, but make
I mean,
it a
yeah,
Beast.
Just a small one.
If he suggested putting Asajj in here, he could also suggest that maybe we get to see the Zillow Beast go nuts.
He's like, this is a suggestion. Put it in. I want to see it.
Just in case they're still here, Madison, thanks so much for the super chat. Said, haven't watched the episode yet. Just popping in to say I'm so happy to see my two favorite Star Wars content creators chatting together. Thanks for all you guys bring to the fandom.
Oh,
Thanks,
that's
Madison.
so nice.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Madison.
Yeah.
I'll ask another question that we've been seeing a lot. Now that we're in the back half of the season, it's like we have to re-up on all of the questions we had at the start. Do you think we might see Boba Fett in this show?
It feels like a lost opportunity if we don't, based off of everything that we have been talking about for years, but maybe it just wasn't part of the show. I don't know.
Yeah, he's one of those characters that I'm like, he could show up and they could find room for him in this story, and it would, if they could really make it fit with just the overall story of the clones, that would be nice. I don't really see it happening though. I don't know that we have time to introduce Boba Fett, but we got a whole episode with Asajj Ventress, so what do I know?
Yeah, I was a huge proponent of Boba Fett showing up. In season 2, I feel like we talked about it a lot on Skytalkers, or I did. I was like, bring him in. He needs to be here. You know, we got to see this reunion, meetup, whatever it's going to be. But yeah, I'm with you, Molly. I just don't know if I think there's time. I think because I want so much time to spend with them as a group, as just their little squad, thinking, you know, assuming that they might be separated at the end of the season, that I'm like, maybe I'm okay with not having all these new characters or bringing in someone like Boba Fett at this juncture. But I think it could make sense. Daniel Logan was in the season earlier as one of the teenage clones. So I don't know. I think there could be reason that Boba Fett would come back.
We were talking about this earlier today, and I started in the same place of like, I just don't know if there's time. But then the more I talked, I kind of talked myself into it, because they have set up that class 1 bounty hunters are after M count targets. And Asajj has now set up that like, hey, you idiots have been running your mouth about M count all over the galaxy. We know Cad Bane's coming back.
Do you know what an M count is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Who knows?
I do think that there could be an episode where just bounty hunters are after
Yeah.
them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, that's
Boba Fett might
true.
make it.
Cad Bane is going to show up. We know that. He was in the trailers. Also, yeah.
I actually forgot
about.
about that.
Yeah, there was like a little clip of him.
Wow.
I don't know if we knew where he was in that
Yeah.
snippet in the trailers or not, but I'm pretty sure it was like him and Fennec and like maybe
Okay,
there's
then
a
I think
bunch
it's
more.
it's way more likely. Me
Yeah.
forgetting that means that I didn't even consider this. I feel like that's way more likely that we're going to see Boba Fett then, if we're getting a ton of bounty hunters, right?
I was like, what if we get a who's who of bounty hunters showing up just looking for these different M count targets, looking for Omega?
They all show up on Pabu.
The one
no.
shot. Oh no. This is the one shot from the trailer, so can't really tell much
Is that
there.
the only shot? I thought we saw another shot of him, but
You can tell
Uh,
enough though. That's fully.
Are we sure that's
Yeah.
Cad Bane?
Could be anyone under
Could
that
be
hat.
anyone.
Let me search through here again. I might be able to find another.
It's
image
actually
of him
just the new robot Cobb Vanth. He's
Yes.
traveled back in
Back
time.
in time.
And he stole
tracks.
Cad Bane's look.
Don't pander to me, Molly.
Sorry. But again, the fact that Daniel Logan was in studio for a voice for a couple episodes ago, I was like, that makes it more plausible for me because I'm like, he's there. Why not have him record a few lines as Boba Fett?
Could be.
Why not?
Why not?
But I keep
Alright.
thinking,
all right,
like-
he's coming. He's coming. I've come over to the side. He'll be in the series season.
What if
I also
Omega
keep
meets
thinking he's-
him,
Uh-huh.
then
They go
goes
off
off at the
together?
end? Because yeah, they're like the same age, like aging at the same time. I don't know.
Little brother sister reunion.
Oh,
I keep thinking that Boba Fett is just a little shit at this
Yeah.
point, and he's not
Yeah,
gonna
that's the thing.
care
I was
about
gonna say-
anyone or anything.
If he grew up with Omega, he wouldn't be. He wouldn't have to go through everything he did in the Book of Boba Fett to become a good person again.
True.
Yeah.
Good guy Boba Fett comes much later.
Not yet. I
Mhm.
guess I was also going to have a wild speculation of if Boba Fett's blood had also been tested and he knows that he's the same thing as whatever Omega is, and that might connect him to her more when they do meet. But yeah, I don't know what kind of relationship he would have with her at this time, knowing what we know in the future.
And that's a whole other thing with Boba is I wonder if he has the same special blood as Omega or if that was her mutation because she is a member of the Bad Batch. She was like
Yeah.
the fifth one or
Yeah.
sixth. I
Mhm.
can't remember. I can't count.
But kind of
But-
to your point about the clones like rapidly aging and how that might affect their ability to access the Force or something like that. If Boba also isn't aging quickly like Omega, then maybe they're more susceptible because of that. That could be a reason in addition to her being like defective.
Mhm.
That was a thing in Legends in the Thrawn trilogy. If you grew a clone too fast, the Force would basically drive them insane. So there
Oh,
is
oh.
like some correlation between
Oh,
the
that's
Force and
interesting.
cloning.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Lots to think about.
Well, it's 7, so we can start to let you both go and enjoy the rest of your evening. But is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we do?
I don't think so. Sorry if you can hear sirens sometimes. I should have said this before. I live in New York City, so it's very loud often. But thank you guys for having us. This was so awesome.
Were you
Anytime.
able
That
to
was very fun.
see? Were you able to see the Empire State Building when it was all lit up?
No. It's so sad.
Dang.
sad.
I feel like
It
they
was
gave us
amazing.
no warning for that. It was
I
just like,
know.
oh
Yeah.
Tell me
here's
about
the
it.
thing.
Yeah, I feel it. I watched it on Instagram Live with everyone else or TikTok Live, whatever. And I felt like even if I were in the street looking at it, I probably would have gotten the side of the building wrong
Mm.
and would have been disappointed. So I'm glad that I watched it on my Instagram, or TikTok,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, we were
they had a
recording
much-
when it happened, and Charlotte was like, "Wait a second, we got to stop recording and watch."
As she went running down the street.
Yeah, she's like, "Hold on," with her microphone in the road.
That would have, yeah. I feel like the drone shot that they had, or wherever they were set up, was probably better than you could see from the street.
Yeah,
level.
totally. There was no way that whatever view I could see from the street was going to be as good as they had it. So it's okay.
That's fair.
Yeah. If only they could do that like every night. That would be the best ever.
Yeah.
That'd be rad.
Yeah.
they could bring it back for like May the 4th. That would
They
be fun if
could.
they did that. Yeah.
They could. Even if it was an
So-
abridged version, you know,
Mhm.
without the people fighting on the top of it or whatever. I would settle
Yeah.
for anything, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, before you go, where can everyone follow you online and check out Skytalkers?
Yeah, well, thank you guys again for having us on. This was really, really fun. And I'm so glad we got to talk about this episode with Ventress. Like, honestly, the perfect episode for us to be on. So thank you again. But Charlotte and I are Skytalkers. We have a podcast. You can find us on Twitter, X at Skytalkers Pod, our website, skytalkers.com, or our Apple Podcast, Spotify. Those are everywhere you can find us. And we are talking about Bad Batch 2 this season. And so we'll have an episode up hopefully this weekend
Tomorrow.
all about the last 2 episodes of the Bad Batch. So that will be what you can look forward to from us next.
Just search
Awesome.
Skytalkers. We're around.
Yep, we're
And,
there.
and there's links in the description. So go check them out.
Thank
I
you
like
so
just
much.
that you seem chill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much. So you have
Yeah.
such
Thanks.
great viewers and listeners for your
Yeah.
YouTube channel. It's just like the best. I know that. I don't know. I just always know that it's going to be a chill time, a good time, and super positive. So we really
community.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing
thank you.
community.
Anytime. Y'all are welcome.
Yeah.
All right.
So-
We'll see you guys around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
And we will hang out, answer a few chat questions here. And we will get started with
There's
Zora
no ad
Lynn's.
roll. I feel like we. Sorry, I just
What?
expect an
Oh,
ad roll now, but it's
Are you
fine.
antsy? Did you want to get up? Do you want to run around?
No,
have a
I'm
minute?
good. I just like switched positions, and yeah, I'm good now.
Nope, it's not a sponsored stream tonight, so we're going to Zoralens. Thank you so much for the super chat. Who would you like to see in a Hidden Path show? I would love Riva. Interactions with her and Ventress would be awesome as former Darksiders trying to do better.
I was gonna say that earlier when we were talking about the possibility of a Path show. I would hope that Riva would be in it, live action or animated.
That's interesting because I was assuming that if the next animated show is about the Path, let's just pretend that that's a given. I assumed it would be immediately after the Bad Batch and kind of show the start of the Path, which means Riva would still be like 9 years away from leaving the Inquisitorius. But there's nothing that says that it would have to take place immediately after the Bad Batch. It could jump into the future. So yeah, I mean, Riva was also my first thought because it sounds like there's not going to be a season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but they could potentially continue that story on. And if they
Mhm.
did, the Hidden Path makes sense to me.
Yeah, it would feel kind of like an opportunity for somewhat of an Obi-Wan season 2 and somewhat of a continuation of Bad Batch if this was going to be animated and you know we could always get guest appearances from the Bad Batch, from Omega, from what they've could possibly set up at the end of the season or in some sort of epilogue. That would be cool.
And of course, Marin. I'd
Marin.
love Marin. Seer Junda. There have been a significant number of characters that have been part of the Hidden Path. Cal Kestis, depending on when it takes place.
I keep talking about how much I want Ventress and Marin to meet, and I'm not positive that they would get along, but I still just like want to see that happen. I don't want to assume that they would just be best buds right off the bat just because they're both Night Sisters or former Night Sisters.
Actually do think there would be some conflict there because Marin was left alone. Ventress was like the sole survivor. Mother Talzin disappeared. Ventress lived and left. And Marin, as far as we know, was the only survivor left in that village. So if she found out that Ventress just dipped, she'd probably be upset.
Maybe. I just want them to hang out.
but it would be a good story, and
together.
eventually they would become friends.
Yeah.
But it would be tough at first.
Yeah.
Ice, thank you for the next one. The Night Sister is back. Really like this episode. Great to see Ventress again. It wasn't what I expected, but in a good way. I obviously have many questions, but I love what they're doing with her. I like how they treated Ventress like a ghost in the shadows in her introduction. Maybe a nod to how she may as well be a ghost in the fact that she's been resurrected for this appearance. Nice touch. It also was not at all what I thought it was going to be. Just based on what they showed us in the trailer with lots of lightsabers and stuff, I thought that it was going to be maybe she caught up to them in the middle of a fight and helped them out. I didn't think they were going to be at odds.
Yeah, I didn't really think so either. I feel like that was going to just be like a quick one-time threat, maybe. I don't know. I really like how they did it, though.
Yeah, it was a good way to catch up with her, especially after Dark Disciple. Still leaves a lot of questions, but I think it was smart of them to put an article out today on StarWars.com that says, "You'll get your answers, nerds. Just be patient. Like, it's coming."
The answers are coming.
And as said nerd, I was like, thank you. Okay.
I was going to be fine if they didn't come right out and say that, but I'm glad that they did, because that just solidified my theory that she'll have, and a lot of other people's theories, that she'll have a Tales of the Jedi episode. I should have brought this super chat up earlier, but I don't know if this is Donline Dude or D Online Dude, but either one. Thank you for the super chat. Vader showing up would totally crush Rex's spirit.
I mean, that would be a bummer. If Rex might not know who he is at first, but if he found out, it might be enough to make him want to go retire on Selos on an ATTE where he goes fishing. Like,
yeah.
I still think there's got to be something that makes Rex sad and makes him want to leave and go off on his own.
Yeah. Okay. It's Donline.
Donline.
Love it. We did talk about last Q&A or last live stream we did, the fact that Rex would be the person with the most connection to Vader if he were to show up. So we would hope that Rex would be involved in that story at some point.
Ice, thank you for some more super chats. Is it possible the Jedi never finished the paperwork for Asajj's pardon? They may have started it with intention to follow through, but then she died. I think there's potential for that too. I do think that everything that they did in Dark Disciple, if they didn't have to make it like part of the record and public knowledge, they probably wouldn't.
Yeah. We talked about them kind of covering it up too.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Is that they would just be like, oh, well, if she's dead, we don't have to finish this paperwork. We don't have to let everyone know that we tried to assassinate Dooku. Because they realized it was a bad idea at the end, so they were probably just like, let's put all these papers over here and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
The animation. I was going to read these as well. The animation this episode felt on another level. The fidelity was insane. Just when I think they can't top themselves, they proved me wrong big time. Finally, someone name dropped midichlorians out loud. I feel like we waited for that for so long, and then it happened. I pumped my fist. I think we just looked at each other and nodded like, okay, finally. They said the word. I get why they're
Yeah.
saying him count, but thank you for saying midichlorian.
Yeah. I was like, if they bring Asajj or anyone who is currently or used to be a Jedi, there's no reason for them to not say the full word. So now they all know what the full term is, and maybe they'll keep saying it, except maybe not in front of anyone else.
And Wrecker's going to keep getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Just say something wrong every time. The
Oh.
monochlorian count.
What about the Mandy Claritons? Stephanie Z, thanks for the super chat. This would be the show for Vader to meet face to face with Rex. Okay, so we were talking about this earlier. So I hope it happens and we get a reunion between them. Only Rex won't know who Vader really is.
And I wonder if Vader would twist the knife at all.
Oh yeah, because
Or if
Vader
he would
would
even care.
Vader would know who he was,
Mhm.
but Rex wouldn't realize who Vader was. And so after seeing the way that Anakin / Vader spoke to Obi-Wan at the end of Obi-Wan, I'm like, he would twist the knife if he could.
But that was a little different because he had so much anger towards Obi-Wan. Rex, I feel like he
True.
might just think nothing of Rex, which is also sad and heartbreaking, but I don't know. Like, I'm trying to decide if he would just call him, oh, Captain Rex, like more nonchalantly. And then Rex would be like, what? Who are you? And maybe be able to piece it together. I don't know.
I don't know, because the fact that he survived this long might get on Vader's nerves. And so he might want to like mess with him a little.
Well, like, I don't think he has any vendetta against Rex, not the way he does Obi-Wan.
But he's a bad guy.
I
And
know.
he does bad things.
He does. He's a bad man. I'm over here trying to protect my heart, Molly. I don't want him to. Don't hurt Rex.
I loved seeing Hayden be mean as Vader when we got that moment in Obi-Wan with the half helmet situation. So I just want to see Vader be mean.
Oh, this is a pretty solid point. Tom Ed points out, if Rex knows who Vader is, then wouldn't he tell Ahsoka in season 2? Yeah, probably.
I don't think he knows.
Well, yeah, that's what we're saying. That Anakin then would not reveal himself in the Bad Batch.
Right.
Okay, then what are you talking about twisting the knife?
Well, I think he could do that without revealing himself.
What would he do?
I don't know. He's not going to... I'm just saying, like, he knows how to be physically, mentally intimidating. And he knows how to use information against people. So he could do it without revealing who he was.
I was thinking in my head, would he twist the knife by telling Rex, hi, it's me, Anakin, and I hate you now?
No. I don't think so.
Ice, thank you for another super chat. I did notice the extra marks on Asajj's face. I just thought they were new details we could see because of the advancements in animation. But I liked Alex's idea that they might be scars from the Force lightning. I'm just guessing, and I'm kind of seeing what I want to see, but I wouldn't mind it if it were scars, just a little connection back to Dark Disciple and what happened to her.
I also kind of thought it was just because what the Great Mothers look like in live action from Ahsoka, their skin has some like multi-layer texture going on.
Mhm.
So I thought maybe the animation was just trying to get closer to what they achieved in live action makeup.
Yeah, they could just be doing that as well.
But either that or remnants of Force lightning trauma, both are cool and both are impressive.
Either way, it looked great.
I think
close-ups of her were
Ventress
awesome.
probably has a great skincare routine. She's using her retinols to get rid of any Force lightning remnants.
She's doing commercials now for CeraVe or whatever.
Yeah,
just being
she's
like,
like,
do you have force lightning scars?
look how clear my skin is. Except she says it like Ventress, look how clear my skin
Look how
is.
clear.
Another super chat from Donline Dude. Imagine if the Bad Batch has a post-credit scene that jumps years ahead and Omega shows up at Boba's palace, now played by Emery's actress Keisha Castle Hughes. We have talked about the idea of a post-credits or finale epilogue moment. I loved getting that in Rebels. I think it would be great to get one in Bad Batch. Do we jump all the way to Boba's palace in live action? That would be a little jarring, but hey,
that is far. I guess it's probably up to, how much they want to lock in about her future. Like, I kind of wonder if Dave Filoni knew that one day he'd get to do Ahsoka season 2, would he have done everything he did in the epilogue for Rebels? Or would he have skipped the epilogue or just teased a little and not set some things in stone? Because then people are like, wait, why isn't Ahsoka's robe white in this scene? And blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's little stuff.
I know, but people still freak out about it. So I wonder,
I don't think that's anything Dave is worried about.
I wonder just how much they want to lock in for the future.
Yeah.
If they are like, we might revisit these characters. Unless that is something that, like, the next thing we're going to do with Omega is something where she's an adult. And they know that.
I mean, I would love to see a live action Omega at some point. I don't think we'll see it anytime soon, though.
No, I don't think so either.
It would be a little like Roger Rabbit to go from animation to
I guess
live action.
I thought that this would still be an animated epilogue. And not live action.
Okay.
But just it would be Omega's older voice.
Oh, okay. I read played by Keisha Castle Hughes, and in my head I was thinking about her in person.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Thanks for another one, Ice. The fight between Ventress and the clones was awesome. Loved the hand-to-hand combat. Looked so good. Again, the animation quality was stellar. The team's theme kicking in when Crosshair got their weapons gave me goosebumps. Also, did you notice his hand seemed much steadier in this one? Yeah, there weren't any moments of Crosshair gripping his hand or anything like that. So I do think you're right.
I was worried when Crosshair grabbed his blaster and had it pointed at Ventress that she was going to say something about his handshake.
Oh.
Like that she had been paying attention to it and had seen it, and she was going to make that little jab at like, don't even try it, shaky boy, like something dumb like that. But it's funny that you say that moment gave you goosebumps, because for me, that moment was like, you're going down, buddy. Guys, don't do it. She'll kick your butts.
I did love that she went hand to hand for a while. She's like, I don't need the lightsaber. Okay, you're going to use your blasters. Now you're cheating. I liked that too. When she pulled other blasters away, she's like, no cheating now.
It follows so well to her attitude from Dark Disciple, where when her and Quinlan first really team up together, she's like, all right, man, you need some work. You need to put in the work. Your routine is awful. And she like gives him a workout routine and is like training him and saying that he's lazy and blah, blah, blah. And so I am glad that Ventress is keeping it tight.
By the way, I'm seeing people like Recovery Hacker talk about starting Dark Disciple tonight. Great job. Should you read it? Yeah, if you like Ventress and where she's at now, I think it's definitely worth a read, because we don't know how she got out of what happens at the end of that book, but they're thinking about it. They have an answer. We'll just find it out later.
We also have a sort of more in-depth video. Is that public on the channel, or is that on Patreon?
The one we did on Dark Disciple?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's public.
Okay. It's like a 30-40 minute video of us diving into Dark Disciple. If you don't want to read it, there's always that.
But you should read it. It's really good.
But
And the audiobook is really good.
the audiobook, oh, it's perfection. All the voices are great. Miranda here has the next super chat. Do you think we could get a Dark Disciple as Tales of the Jedi? Glad I didn't miss Clone Zone entirely. Just finished the episode. Cheers, Alex and Molly. So, like, the story of Dark Disciple as a episode of Tales of the Jedi. Like, condensed, kind of like what they did with Ahsoka.
I mean, they'd have to condense it so much.
I could see them doing that, though.
Yeah, I do think that it's possible. I hope they don't. If they're going to adapt it, I would rather they just say, hey, we're going to do the whole arc. Like, we'll bring back it. They'd have to title it something different. And I don't think it should be Tales of the Jedi. It could just be like a special mini series. And we did Dark Disciple, and it's 8 episodes or however long. It was supposed to be really long. So they just put that out. 8 20-minute episodes. I would rather they adapt it fully instead of just do an episode or two condensed.
We've talked about this in the past. I always thought it would be cool if they took the unfinished arcs, they took Dark Disciple, and they made a little, maybe like 3-episode mini-series, like Dawnline Dude is saying, just straight to Disney Plus, or an animated movie, something special. Because I agree. I think it needs its own story. I think there's enough there. But at the same time, with how horny that book is, I wonder if maybe they're trying to get away from that.
Well, I think that the book got to horn it up a little bit, whereas the original scripts were not quite so much like that. Because it originally was going to be just a Clone Wars episode. I'm sure there would be some flirtation, but not some of the straight up, like, there's no other way to interpret what you just said, Quinlan Boss. Levels.
Everyone's going to remember the day that Alex Damon said horn it up live on the internet.
That's it. You brought it up.
I'm sorry.
It's true. The book's pretty horny.
The book has a lot of sexual undertones between Ventress and Qui-Gon. Not Qui-Gon.
It's Qui-Gon.
Quinlan.
Sometimes it's not even undertones. It's just like, yep,
it's
that's
just
what you're
for
saying
the
and doing.
And we all said, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Christy Golden. Thank you for another one. I loved Asajj's line that she and the clones were pawns in the same war. So did I. That's exactly what I was hoping for, so I was happy she addressed it. I like that Ventress reaching out into nature attracted a massive sea creature, showing she's still struggling with the darkness she once held. Being fully on the light side is new to her. Yeah, I thought the sea creature was great. I liked that it... Oh, I thought about this after I did my review, and I was annoyed with myself. But Asajj uses the Force to pull up the little green jellyfish thing, and I think that's all she meant to do. But it also attracted this big scary monster, and its mouth was covered in like green glowy stuff. I think it's clearly the predator that eats those jellyfish.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if Asajj coming to Pabu could somehow lead to the Empire finding it.
Oh, I like that. So, like,
the Asajj is the jellyfish, and the Empire is the, I forget what they called it, a Vermanth or something. The big turtle squid.
Yeah,
could be like she inadvertently led them there, or it could be the clones running their mouths about M counts.
It's just another way that the term Harbinger works out. Like her coming there is leading to, yeah. That would suck if she were somehow being tracked or the Empire found out about Pabu from her. That would be really unfortunate. But yeah, I did think about that because the bigger monster, its mouth was like green and glowy. and I had the thought of like those big nasty deep sea creatures that have like the little light dangling to
Yeah.
attract. So like what if
Anglerfish.
what if its mouth is that color to attract the other green
Oh.
jellyfish, and they come along and it's just like chomping on them?
I just assumed it was to show that like I've been eating them and you summoned my food up to the surface, so I guess I gotta follow my food.
Yeah, he's like, oh, a buffet. No
Yeah.
one told me.
Oh, right on.
And then Ice with another super chat here. Forgot to say about the fight, but it just reminded me how excited I am for hand-to-hand combat in the Acolyte. The timing is very inconvenient. It did make me think of the Acolyte with how very like martial artsy it was.
Asajj got to get her little like force push karate chop in.
It almost looked like she charged it up for a second. She's like, "Oh, Wrecker's a big guy, and I'm trying to get both of them. So like, let me line it up.
Really get my Kamehameha ready to go." Well, that was fun. I think we're gonna start wrapping up here. We'll say thank you once again to the Skytalkers. We are not going to be doing a Lego stream tomorrow because we're actually going to go out of town for a little, not a full-on vacation, just a weekend getaway. So we're going to be packing and getting ready tomorrow night. So we will be back to stream next week. Let me see.
2 episodes next week.
2 episodes next week, episodes 10 and 11. And we're having Kelly Knox on because it's close to April Fool's Day. She is the queen of the Star Wars dad joke. And her book is coming out around that time. So we wanted to have her on to talk about that and the Bad Batch. So yeah, Kelly Knox next week. Really excited about it.
Get your pre-orders in for that Star Wars dad jokes book. It is hilarious. And like, if you think you know dad jokes, you need to read this book, because I was like, oh my God, there's so many good dad jokes that I never would have thought of.
I don't know how she does it every day on Twitter. Like, she filled a book and then still every day she just like, here's another one. I'm like,
another banger.
What a gift.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
But thank you again, everyone, for hanging out with us. Thank you to the Skytalkers. Go check them out if you never have before, because their analysis on all Star Wars, but they specifically really love Star Wars animation. They do a great job over there.
All their links are in the description down below.
Give them a follow. But everyone, you have a great rest of your night, and may the Force be with you.